want to start today with something a little uncomfortable. Mark, can I confess something?
Always. Go ahead.
Last week, I was in a conversation with someone, a native English speaker, and afterwards, I walked away convinced that I had sounded terrible, that my English was clumsy, that I had used the wrong word 3 different times, that the other person was probably being polite, but secretly thinking, her English isn't that good.
Wait, you felt that way?
Me, yes. And here's the strange part. A few days later, I actually saw a clip of that conversation. Someone had recorded a small part of it for a different reason, and when I watched it back,
Let me guess.
it was fine. It was completely fine. My English sounded natural. I was articulate. I made one small slip, one, and even that wasn't really a mistake. It was just a moment of hesitation. And yet, in my memory, I had failed completely.
And this is the gap, this exact gap right here.
This is the gap, and it is the reason we are doing this episode today. Because if I, someone who has been speaking English for many years, can walk away from a normal conversation feeling like that, then I promise you, every single person watching this has felt it too. Maybe yesterday, maybe an hour ago, maybe right now while you're listening.
That feeling that your English is worse than it actually is.
That feeling, the feeling that everyone else can hear something wrong with you that you cannot fix, that your competence, your actual ability, and your confidence, how you feel about your ability, they are living in completely different worlds.
And the psychology behind this is genuinely fascinating because it is not random. It is not a personality flaw. It is not because you haven't studied enough. It is a specific, well-documented mental pattern. And once you understand it, something starts to shift.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Mark. Today we are talking about the confidence-competence gap, why you are almost certainly better at English than you think you are, and why your brain refuses to believe it.
This is for B2 and C1 learners, the ones who are stuck in that very specific, painful place where you know enough English to recognize your own mistakes, but you don't know enough yet to feel relaxed about them.
The worst plateau, the one that feels like it lasts forever.
Stay with us until the end. We have a full word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 vocabulary items, a role play that I think will genuinely change how you hear your own English.
Quick question for the comments before we start. When was the last time you finished a conversation in English and felt bad about how it went? One sentence in the comments. We read them, we respond.
Okay, let's open this up properly.
So, Sophie, let's define this properly first. What exactly is the confidence-competence gap when it comes to language?
Okay, so competence, that is your actual skill, your real ability, the English you can produce when you open your mouth and speak.
The objective truth.
The objective truth. And confidence, that is your perception of your skill, how good you feel you are, how you judge yourself.
And these two things, for most language learners, are not even close to each other.
They are not even in the same room, and here's what's interesting. Research on this shows a pattern that comes up again and again. People who are highly competent at something tend to underestimate themselves, and people who are not very competent often overestimate themselves.
This is the famous Dunning-Kruger effect, although usually people only quote half of it.
Right. Most people know the part where beginners feel overconfident, but the other half, which nobody talks about, is that experts often feel underconfident because the more you know, the more you become aware of what you don't know yet.
Which is exactly the trap that B2 and C1 learners fall into.
Exactly. When you were at A1, beginner, you didn't know what you didn't know, so you spoke freely. You made huge mistakes and didn't notice them, and honestly, you probably enjoyed speaking English more.
I remember that phase, the phase of saying, I am very happy because the weather is good today, with full confidence and not realizing how stiff it sounded.
Right, and being proud of yourself, and rightly so. It was a real achievement.
And then something happens around B2, B1.
Yes, your ear develops. You start to hear the gap between what you say and what native speakers say. You start to notice your own mistakes mid-sentence. You start to understand jokes and then immediately notice you wouldn't be able to make that joke yourself.
And suddenly, speaking English becomes harder, not because your English got worse, but because your awareness got better.
This is the cruel paradox of language learning. Your competence is going up, your confidence is going down at exactly the same time.
And so the people who are objectively best, the people who've studied longest, have the richest vocabulary, can express the most nuance, they are often the ones who feel the worst about their English.
Which is heartbreaking because they are the closest to fluency and they don't know it.
Let's get into why the brain does this, because I think understanding the mechanism helps people stop blaming themselves.
Yes, let's. There are at least 4 psychological patterns happening here, and I think every learner watching will recognize themselves in at least 2 of them.
Pattern 1, the spotlight effect.
The spotlight effect. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon. We tend to massively overestimate how much other people are paying attention to our flaws. We feel like we are standing under a bright spotlight, every mistake exposed, every wrong word noticed.
When in reality,
In reality, the other person is mostly thinking about themselves, about what they are going to say next, about whether they sound smart, about what they're doing for dinner. They are not hyper-analyzing your grammar.
I love this one because it is so freeing once you really absorb it.
It really is. The other person is not your English teacher. They're not grading you. They are just a person trying to communicate, just like you.
Pattern 2, the mistake magnification effect.
This one is brutal. When learners replay a conversation in their head afterwards, which we all do,
Constantly.
they remember the mistakes with surgical precision. The wrong preposition, the pause that lasted too long, the word they couldn't find, those moments are burned into their memory.
But what about the rest of the conversation?
Forgotten, erased. The 5 sentences they spoke beautifully, gone. The clever observation they made, gone. The moment they made the other person laugh, gone. The brain edits the memory to focus only on what went wrong.
This is why your memory of the conversation is almost always worse than the conversation actually was.
Always, almost without exception. If you could record yourself and watch it back, and I really recommend doing this once, you would be shocked at how different reality is from your memory.
Pattern 3, and this one is specific to language learners, the native speaker comparison trap.
Oh, this one is so common. Learners compare themselves not to where they were 6 months ago, which would be fair, but to native speakers, educated, articulate native speakers, people who have spoken English every day for 30 or 40 years.
Which is, let's be honest, an absurd comparison.
Completely absurd. It would be like someone learning to play guitar for 2 years, comparing themselves to a professional guitar concert guitarist and feeling bad about the gap.
And yet, that's what learners do every single day.
Every day they listen to a podcast in English, and instead of celebrating that they understood it, which is huge, they think, I could never speak that fluently.
And then they feel bad about a skill they don't even need to have yet.
Right. The goal is not to sound exactly like a native speaker. The goal is to communicate clearly, naturally, and with personality. And many B2 and C1 learners are already doing that. They just don't know it.
Pattern 4, and this is the deepest one, the imposter feeling.
This is where someone has clear evidence of their competence. Maybe they passed an exam. Maybe they got a job in English. Maybe they had a long, successful conversation, and instead of letting that evidence update their self-image, they explain it away.
Oh, that was easy. Oh, they were just being nice. Oh, I got lucky.
Exactly. The brain refuses to absorb positive evidence. It's like a filter that lets in every negative signal and blocks every positive one.
And the result is that you can have years of evidence that your English works and still feel deep down that you're somehow getting away with something.
That you're not really as good as people think. That one day someone will figure it out. That your English is a kind of trick that might stop working.
Which is exhausting to live like that.
It really is. And so many language learners do live like that.
Okay, so we have these 4 patterns: spotlight effect, mistake magnification, native speaker comparison, and the imposter feeling. Now, let's do the part of the episode that actually helps, because naming the problem is interesting, but it's not enough.
Right. So how do we actually start to close this gap?
Strategy 1, and I think this is the single most powerful one: collect evidence.
Yes, active evidence collection, because your brain is biased against you, so you have to deliberately, consciously push back.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Here's what I recommend. Every time you have a conversation in English, even a small one, afterwards, before your brain has time to spiral, write down one thing that went well.
Just one.
Just one. I used the word pivot naturally and the other person understood me. Or I made a small joke and they laughed. Or I asked a follow-up question that kept the conversation going. Tiny things, real things.
And over time,
Over time, you build a library of evidence, concrete proof, so that the next time your brain tells you your English is terrible, you can open this list and look at 30 pieces of counter-evidence.
That's beautiful because the brain believes patterns more than it believes single moments.
Exactly. One good conversation feels like luck. 30 good conversations feels like reality.
Strategy 2, reframe what mistakes actually mean.
This is huge for B2 and C1 learners because at this level, you make fewer mistakes than at A2 or B1, but each mistake feels worse. It hurts more.
Why is that?
Because you've internalized higher standards, you expect yourself to be better. So when you do make a mistake, it doesn't feel like a normal part of learning anymore. It feels like a failure.
and the reframe is?
The reframe is, mistakes at the B2 and C1 level are evidence of stretching. They are evidence of attempting something harder. They are not regression. They are growth in disguise.
A learner who never makes mistakes is a learner who isn't pushing themselves anymore.
Right. So when you say something a little awkwardly, that means you try to express something genuinely complex. That is a good sign, not a bad one.
Strategy 3, change who you are listening to.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, your brain has an internal voice that comments on your English, and for many learners, that voice is brutal. That sounded weird. Why did you say that? They're judging you. You should know this by now.
The inner critic.
The inner critic. And the strategy is, start to notice it. And when you notice it, ask yourself, would I say this to a friend who was learning my native language?
Oh, that is a powerful question.
Because if a friend was learning your language and made a small mistake, you would never say to them, wow, that was terrible. You should know this by now. Everyone is judging you.
You would say, that was great. Your accent is so clear. Or, I know exactly what you mean. Let me help you find the word.
Right. So give yourself the kindness you would give a friend. The standard you hold yourself to is a standard you would never apply to anyone else.
That asymmetry, that is the heart of the confidence-competence gap.
It really is.
Strategy 4, and I love this one. Gather external feedback, real feedback, not the feedback your brain invents.
Because your brain is making up feedback.
Constantly. You walk away from a conversation and your brain says, they thought you sounded bad, but you have no actual evidence of that. It's a story your mind constructed.
So how do you get real feedback?
2 ways. First, record yourself speaking English, a voice memo, a short video, talking about your day or describing your work or summarizing something you read. Listen back 2 days later when the emotion has faded.
And what happens?
Almost every learner I have ever recommended this to has had the same reaction. Oh, I sound better than I thought.
Every time?
Almost every time, because the recording is reality, and reality is usually kinder than memory.
And the second way?
Ask people directly. Ask a friend, a teacher, a colleague. Honestly, what is one thing about my English that works well? And let them answer. And, this is the hard part, believe them.
Don't argue with them.
Don't argue. Don't say, oh, you're just being nice. Just say thank you and let it land.
This is so much harder than it sounds.
It really is, because the brain wants to deflect compliments about language. It feels like cheating to accept them.
But it isn't cheating. It is updating your model of yourself based on real-world data.
Exactly. Now, let's do something practical. Let's do a role play, but a different kind of role play. Let's role play the internal conversation that happens after a normal English interaction.
Oh, I love this. Yes.
Okay, Imagine you have just finished a meeting at work, in English. You're walking back to your desk. Your brain starts.
That was a disaster. I said in the same time instead of at the same time. Did anyone notice? They definitely noticed. Why can I never remember that?
Wait, did anyone react? Did anyone correct you? Did anyone seem confused?
No, they didn't.
Did you communicate your point?
Yes, actually, they nodded. The manager said it was a good observation.
So the meeting went well.
But I made a mistake.
You made one small prepositional slip in a 15-minute professional discussion in your second language about a complex topic with native speakers.
When you say it like that,
When I say it like that, it sounds like what it actually is, which is an extremely small flaw inside a much larger success.
and this is the conversation that has to happen in the moment in your own head, every time.
Every time, because the inner critic is fast. It speaks first, and if you don't have a rational voice ready to push back, the critic wins.
And the critic is wrong, almost always.
Almost always. Not because you have no flaws, everyone has flaws, but because the critic is wildly out of proportion. It treats a small mistake like a catastrophe.
And if you can train yourself to interrupt that voice, to bring in the rational voice instead, over time the gap starts to close.
Slowly, but it closes. Your competence and your confidence start to align. And one day you have a conversation and you walk away and you just feel normal, not anxious, not analyzing, just present.
That is the goal.
That is the goal. Not perfection, not native level fluency, just being able to use the English you already have without sabotaging yourself.
Okay, let's do a quick mistake lab. But this mistake lab is different from a normal one. We are not looking at grammar mistakes. We are looking at thinking mistakes, the specific thoughts that learners have that make the gap worse.
Yes, let's go through 5.
Thinking mistake number 1. If I make a mistake, they will think my English is bad.
The reframe, native speakers make mistakes constantly. Listen to any unscripted interview, any podcast. They restart sentences, they use the wrong word, they say and like 30 times. Mistakes are not what define your English. Recovery is what defines your English.
Thinking mistake number 2. I should have known that word.
The reframe, there are hundreds of thousands of words in English. Even native speakers don't know them all. Not knowing a word is normal. The skill is in navigating around the word you don't know, and that skill is more useful than vocabulary anyway.
Thinking mistake number 3. My accent is too strong.
The reframe, accents are not problems. Accents are personality. The world is full of people who speak English with a non-native accent and are taken completely seriously. As long as you're understood, your accent is not a weakness, it's a feature.
Thinking mistake number 4. I'll start speaking more confidently when my English is better.
The reframe, this is the trap. Your English doesn't improve until you start speaking confidently. The confidence comes first. It is not the reward for fluency, it is the cause of fluency.
Thinking mistake number 5. Everyone else seems more fluent than me.
The reframe, you are comparing your inside to everyone else's outside. You see their smooth sentences. You don't see their internal panic. You don't see them rehearsing in their head. Everyone is more nervous than they appear.
And once you really absorb that, the playing field looks completely different.
It does. You're not the only one struggling. Almost no one feels confident in a second language. The ones who seem confident have just gotten better at hiding the discomfort. And eventually, you can do that too.
Word tour?
Word tour. Word tour.
First word, articulate. To be articulate means to express your thoughts clearly, fluently, and with precision. It's an adjective, and it's one of the highest compliments you can give to a speaker.
For example, she is one of the most articulate speakers I have ever heard. Every sentence she says feels carefully chosen. Or, many B2 and C1 learners are far more articulate than they give themselves credit for. Repeat, articulate.
Articulate.
Next, to underestimate. To underestimate someone or something means to think they are less skilled, less powerful, or less valuable than they actually are. It is the opposite of overestimate.
For example, highly competent people consistently underestimate their own abilities. This is one of the strangest patterns in psychology. Or, Don't underestimate how much progress you have made in the last year. Repeat, underestimate.
Underestimate.
Next, a plateau. A plateau is a stage in learning where progress feels flat, where you seem to not be improving even though you're working hard. The word originally means a flat, high area of land, and the metaphor is perfect for language learning.
For example, most B2 learners hit a plateau where they feel like their English has stopped improving, but in most cases, the progress has just become invisible. Or, hitting a plateau is not a sign of failure, it is a sign that you have moved past the easy gains. Repeat, a plateau.
A plateau.
Next, to sabotage. To sabotage something is to deliberately damage or undermine it. We often use it for self-sabotage, when someone unintentionally hurts their own progress. It's a very useful word for psychology and self-development.
For example, many learners sabotage their own confidence by replaying every small mistake in their head for hours afterwards. Or, she realized she had been sabotaging her own speaking practice by avoiding any conversation that felt hard. Repeat, sabotage.
Sabotage.
Next, to reframe. To reframe means to look at something from a different angle, to change the meaning you give to a situation. It's a powerful word in psychology, coaching, and therapy, and is increasingly common in everyday English.
For example, one of the most useful skills a learner can develop is the ability to reframe mistakes as evidence of growth rather than failure. Or, he reframed the rejection as an opportunity rather than a loss, and his whole attitude shifted. Repeat, reframe.
Reframe. And finally, disproportionate. Something is disproportionate when it's much bigger or smaller than it should be, when it doesn't match the situation in size or importance. This is a beautiful, advanced word for talking about emotions, reactions, or judgments.
For example, the way learners punish themselves for one small grammar mistake is completely disproportionate to the size of the mistake. Or, her anxiety about the conversation was disproportionate to what had actually happened. Repeat, disproportionate.
Disproportionate. 6 words, and every single one of them is something a B2 or C1 learner can start using in real conversations this week. Articulate, underestimate, plateau, sabotage, reframe, and disproportionate.
These are the kinds of words that make your English sound mature, thoughtful, native feeling, not flashy, but grounded.
Okay, last thing before we end. Sophie, if there is one idea you want every person watching to take away from this episode, what is it?
That you are almost certainly better at English than you think you are. And the reason you don't feel that way is not because of your English, it's because of how your brain measures your English. And that measurement is broken. It is biased against you. It always has been.
And the work, the real work, is not just learning more English.
It's learning to trust the English you already have. It's learning to walk away from a conversation and let it be what it was. It's learning to stop being your own worst critic.
Because nobody else is judging you the way you judge yourself. Nobody.
Nobody. The harshest voice in the room is always the one inside your own head. And once you turn the volume down on that voice, your English doesn't just feel easier, it actually becomes easier because you stop fighting yourself.
Small challenge before we go. The next time you finish a conversation in English and your brain immediately tries to tell you it went badly, pause. Just pause. And ask yourself, what is one thing that actually went well? Just one.
And write it down, anywhere. A note on your phone, a scrap of paper, it doesn't matter. Just collect the evidence.
Because the evidence is there. You just have to start noticing it.
And one more thing. Drop a comment. Tell us, what is one thing your English does well? Not what you struggle with, what it does well. Be honest. Be brave. We want to hear it.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind to yourself. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.